What would you do if the man freezing to death in the snow was the same stranger who could change your family's future forever? Most people would have kept walking. After all, winter in the Rocky Mountains showed mercy to no one. But on one icy morning, a poor widow made a choice that would rewrite the destiny of everyone she loved. And by the time spring arrived, the entire valley would be telling her story. The wind screamed across the Colorado mountains like a pack of hungry wolves. Snow covered every trail, every tree, and every rooftop. Emily Carter wrapped her thin wool coat tighter around herself as she pulled a small wooden sled loaded with firewood. Her 10-year-old son, Noah, struggled behind her, while 7-year-old Lily carried a tiny basket filled with frozen berries they had gathered from beneath the snow. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Ever since Emily's husband had died in a mining accident 2 years earlier, life had become a daily battle against hunger and winter. Some nights they survived on nothing more than hot water and dry bread. Still, Emily refused to beg. She believed that as long as they stayed together, hope was never completely gone. That morning, they were hurrying home before another snowstorm arrived. Then Noah suddenly stopped. "Mom." His voice trembled. "I think someone is out there." Emily looked toward the frozen river. At first she saw nothing. Then, a dark shape lay half buried beneath the snow. Her heart skipped. It looked like a man. They rushed closer. The stranger was unconscious. His expensive fur coat was torn. One boot was missing. His hands were blue from the cold. A deep wound covered his shoulder, and frozen blood stained the snow beneath him. Emily gently placed 2 fingers against his neck. A weak pulse. Barely alive. Noah looked frightened. "Mom, if we help him, we may not survive the storm." Emily stared at the stranger. She knew her son was right. Their cabin had only enough food for 2 days. Taking in another person could mean starving together. But leaving him here meant certain death. Emily closed her eyes for a second. Then she whispered, "We don't leave people behind." Together, the 3 of them struggled to lift the heavy man onto their wooden sled. The icy wind pushed against them with every step. The journey home, normally 30 minutes, took nearly 3 exhausting hours. By the time they reached their tiny cabin, darkness had already fallen. Emily lit the last pieces of dry firewood. The warm glow filled the room. She carefully cleaned the stranger's wound using melted snow and old cloth. Lily covered him with every blanket they owned. Noah quietly stared at the unconscious man. "Do you think he'll live?" Emily looked into the fire. "I honestly don't know." Outside, the blizzard grew stronger. Inside, none of them realized they had just rescued one of the wealthiest men in the entire Rocky Mountain territory. Nor did they know, someone dangerous was already searching for him. A dangerous secret. The storm raged through the night. Snow piled against the little cabin until the windows were nearly buried. The fire burned low, and Emily fed it with the last pieces of dry wood she had saved for emergencies. The stranger still hadn't opened his eyes. His breathing was shallow, but steady. Emily mixed a simple herbal tea from dried mountain leaves and carefully pressed the warm cup against his lips. After a few moments, he swallowed. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give her hope. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the cabin. Bang, bang, bang. Noah jumped. Lily grabbed her mother's hand. Emily slowly walked to the door. 3 rough-looking riders stood outside, their horses covered in snow. The tallest man stepped forward. "We're looking for an injured traveler," he said. "Have you seen anyone?" Emily's heart pounded. She knew lying could be dangerous. But something about the men's cold smiles told her they weren't friends. She shook her head. "No, sir. We've been inside since before sunset." The man stared into her eyes for several seconds. Then he glanced toward the cabin. Mind if we take a look? Emily stood in the doorway. My children are frightened. We'd rather be left alone. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, the rider smirked. If you see him, let us know. The three men turned their horses and disappeared into the snow. Emily closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, breathing hard. Noah whispered. They were lying, weren't they? Emily nodded. They weren't searching to rescue him. She looked toward the stranger sleeping by the fire. They were hunting him. Near midnight, the injured man finally opened his eyes. He looked around the tiny cabin in confusion. Where am I? You're safe, Emily said softly. We found you in the snow. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his shoulder. Emily gently stopped him. You've lost a lot of blood. The stranger studied the room. The cracked walls, the worn blankets, the nearly empty shelves. He realized these people had almost nothing. Yet they had shared everything with him. My name is Daniel, he said quietly. Emily smiled. I'm Emily. These are my children, Noah and Lily. Daniel thanked them, but he carefully avoided answering questions about who he was. Emily noticed. Everyone has secrets, she thought. She decided not to press him. The next morning, Daniel insisted on helping despite his injury. He repaired the broken cabin door. He chopped frozen logs with surprising strength. He even carved small wooden toys that made Lily laugh for the first time in weeks. Emily couldn't understand it. This wasn't the behavior of an ordinary traveler. His hands were rough like a woodsman. Yet his manners were those of an educated gentleman. Something didn't add up. Late that afternoon, Daniel looked out the window. Far across the valley, 3 riders had returned, and this time, they were heading straight for the cabin. The truth comes to light. The 3 riders stopped just outside the cabin. Their horses snorted clouds of white breath into the freezing air. Inside, Emily quickly pulled Noah and Lily behind her. Daniel looked through the frosted window and his face turned pale. They found me, he whispered. Emily looked at him. Who are they? Daniel took a deep breath. They're not bounty hunters, they're thieves. They betrayed me and stole something that belongs to my family. Before Emily could ask another question. Bang, bang, bang. The cabin door shook violently. Open the door, a voice shouted. We know he's inside. Emily's hands trembled, but she didn't move. The leader kicked the door again. This is your last warning. Daniel struggled to his feet despite the pain in his shoulder. He picked up an old fireplace poker. I won't let them hurt your family. Emily stepped beside him, holding her late husband's hunting rifle. It had only one bullet left. The door burst open. The 3 men stormed inside. Their leader laughed when he saw Daniel. I told you we would find you. Daniel stood between the criminals and Emily's children. You've already taken enough. The man smirked. No. Not yet. He pulled out a folded map. Tell us where the Silver Ridge documents are. Emily frowned. Silver Ridge. Daniel realized he could hide the truth no longer. He turned to Emily. My full name is Daniel Ashcroft. Emily's eyes widened. She had heard that name before. Ashcroft. The family that owned the largest ranches, timber lands, and mining companies across the mountains. Daniel continued. My father built everything honestly. Before he died, he left legal papers proving that hundreds of acres belonged to the hardworking families who settled this valley, not to greedy investors. The men standing here wanted those papers destroyed so they could steal every piece of land. The leader smiled coldly. And once you're dead, no one will stop us. Suddenly, boom, the rifle fired. Emily hadn't aimed at the men. She fired into the ceiling. The thunderous sound echoed through the valley. Outside, dogs began barking. Lights appeared in distant cabins. Neighbors were waking up. The thieves looked toward the window. They're coming. One of them shouted. The leader cursed. This isn't over, Ashcroft. The three criminals ran into the storm and disappeared into the snowy darkness. Silence filled the cabin. Daniel slowly lowered his head. You saved my life, again. Emily sighed with relief. I wasn't about to let criminals win. The next morning, the storm finally cleared. For the first time in days, bright sunlight covered the mountains. Daniel carefully removed a small leather pouch hidden beneath his coat. Inside were several folded documents sealed with his family's crest. I protected these with my life, he said. But without your courage, they would already be gone. Then Daniel looked at Emily with gratitude. When I'm strong enough to travel, I'd like you and your children to come with me. Emily looked confused. Why? Daniel smiled warmly. Because I intend to repay a debt that can never truly be repaid. Little did Emily know, the journey ahead would change not only her family's future, but the future of the entire valley. A journey of hope. The morning sun finally broke through the clouds, covering the mountains with a golden glow. For the first time in weeks, the valley looked peaceful. Daniel stood outside the cabin, breathing in the cold mountain air. His shoulders still hurt, but he was strong enough to walk again. Emily stepped onto the porch. You shouldn't be standing out here, she said with a smile. You're still recovering. Daniel smiled back. I've been given a second chance. I don't want to waste another minute. He reached into his coat and removed a small leather pouch. Inside were several folded documents and a silver pocket watch. My father gave me these before he died, Daniel said quietly. These papers prove who truly owns thousands of acres in this valley. Powerful men want them destroyed. Emily carefully handed the pouch back. Then you should keep them safe. Daniel nodded. I will. But I can't do it alone. Just then, Noah came running from the woods. Mom. He was out of breath. Someone's coming. Emily looked toward the trail. A long wagon, followed by 6 horsemen, slowly approached the cabin. She immediately feared the worst. Daniel looked closely. Then a smile spread across his face. They're my people. The wagon stopped outside the cabin. An elderly man stepped down, removed his hat, and embraced Daniel tightly. Thank God you're alive, sir. Daniel introduced him. This is Samuel. He's managed my family's ranch for over 30 years. Samuel turned to Emily. So you're the woman who saved Mr. Ashcroft. Emily looked embarrassed. We only did what anyone should do. Samuel smiled gently. I'm afraid that's not true anymore. Daniel faced everyone. I owe this family my life. He then surprised Emily. I want you and your children to come with us. Emily looked shocked. We can't leave everything behind. Daniel glanced around the tiny cabin. You've spent years surviving. I want to give your family the chance to truly live. Emily hesitated. This little cabin held every memory of her late husband. Leaving it behind felt impossible. That evening she walked alone to her husband's grave beneath a tall pine tree. She knelt in the snow. I don't know if I'm making the right decision, she whispered. The children deserve a better life, but I'm afraid. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. She looked toward Noah and Lily laughing beside the cabin. For the first time in years, she saw hope in their eyes instead of fear. Emily stood up. She already knew her answer. The next morning, the small family packed everything they owned into one wooden crate. There wasn't much. A few blankets, some cooking pots, old family photographs, and her husband's Bible. As the wagon rolled away, Emily looked back one last time at the cabin that had been both her prison and her shelter. She silently thanked it, then turned toward the future. But hidden high on a snowy ridge, the 3 outlaws watched the wagons disappear. Their leader narrowed his eyes. Let them believe they've won. He smiled coldly. By the time they reach Ashcroft Ranch, They'll walk straight into our trap. The ambush at Ashcroft Ranch. The journey to Ashcroft Ranch took nearly 2 days. The mountain roads were still buried beneath fresh snow, and every mile seemed quieter than the last. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. Daniel rode beside the wagon, his injured shoulder wrapped tightly beneath his heavy coat. "Don't worry," he said with a reassuring smile. "Once we reach the ranch, you'll finally be safe." Noah looked across the valley and gasped. "Mom, look." In the distance stood the largest ranch Emily had ever seen. A grand wooden lodge overlooked rolling fields, endless pine forests, and dozens of sturdy barns. Cowboys worked with horses while smoke curled from stone chimneys. Lily whispered, "It's like a town." Daniel smiled. "Welcome to Ashcroft Ranch." As the wagon rolled through the gates, dozens of ranch hands removed their hats. They had feared Daniel was dead. Samuel stepped forward and announced, "Mr. Ashcroft has returned." Cheers echoed across the ranch. But the celebration didn't last long. One of the ranch guards came galloping toward them, his horse covered in sweat. "Sir," he shouted, "we've got trouble. The northern barn has been set on fire." Everyone turned toward a column of black smoke rising into the sky. Daniel's expression hardened. "It's them." Within seconds, cowboys raced toward the flames with buckets of water. Emily hurried the children into the main house while Daniel joined the rescue. The fire spread quickly through the dry hay. Just as the flames began to die down, crack, a rifle shot echoed across the valley. A ranch hand's hat flew off his head. "Sniper!" someone yelled. Panic swept through the ranch. The outlaws had been waiting. From the rocky hillside, the gang opened fire, hoping to create enough chaos to steal Daniel's leather pouch. Daniel pulled Emily behind a wagon. "Stay with the children." The ranch hands returned fire while others rushed the women and children inside. Then Noah shouted, "Mom, Daniel's bag." Emily looked down. During the confusion, Daniel's leather pouch had fallen into the snow. One of the outlaws was racing toward it on horseback. Without thinking, Emily sprinted across the open yard. Bullets struck the frozen ground around her. She threw herself forward and grabbed the pouch just seconds before the outlaw reached it. The rider pulled his horse to a stop and pointed his revolver at her. "Hand it over." Emily stood trembling. But she didn't move. "You'll have to take it from me." Before the outlaw could fire. Boom! Daniel's rifle echoed through the valley. The bullet struck the outlaw's weapon, sending it flying into the snow. The frightened horse reared up, throwing the outlaw to the ground. The remaining gang members realized their plan had failed. Their leader cursed angrily. "Retreat." The outlaws disappeared into the forest once again. As silence returned, Daniel walked toward Emily. She handed him the leather pouch. "You risked your life for these papers." Emily smiled. "No, I risked my life for the people those papers will protect." Daniel looked at her with deep respect. At that moment, he realized something. Emily hadn't saved him because he was wealthy. She had saved him because it was the right thing to do. And he silently made a promise. Her family would never struggle alone again. But hidden deep inside the forest, the gang leader watched Ashcroft Ranch through a spyglass. His face twisted into a cruel smile. "If I can't steal the papers, I'll destroy the woman who keeps protecting them." A new beginning. The gang leader disappeared into the forest, but Daniel knew the danger wasn't over. "They'll come back," Samuel warned. Daniel nodded. "But this time, we'll be ready." For the next 2 days, the ranch became a fortress. Cowboys guarded every gate. Lanterns burned throughout the night. The sheriff and his deputies quietly arrived after receiving Daniel's message. No one knew exactly when the outlaws would strike. Then, on the third night, a ranch dog began barking wildly. A lookout rang the alarm bell. "They're here." Nearly a dozen outlaws charged toward the ranch under the cover of darkness. Gunfire echoed across the valley. Cowboys took cover behind fences and wagons while the sheriff's deputies surrounded the attackers from both sides. The gang leader rode straight toward the main house. He wasn't after money anymore. He wanted revenge. Inside the house, Emily gathered Noah and Lily into a safe room. "Stay here," she whispered. "No matter what happens, don't come out." She stepped outside just as the gang leader climbed onto the porch. He pointed his revolver at her. "You've caused me enough trouble." Before he could pull the trigger, Daniel stepped between them. "If you want someone, take me." The outlaw laughed. "That's exactly the plan." He raised his weapon again. Suddenly, a sharp voice echoed through the night. "Drop your gun." The sheriff stood behind him with 6 deputies. The outlaw spun around, but it was too late. Within seconds, he and the remaining gang members were surrounded. One by one, they threw their weapons into the snow. The fight was over. As dawn broke over the mountains, the sheriff placed the gang leader in handcuffs. "You'll spend the rest of your life answering for your crimes." The valley was finally safe. A week later, the courthouse was filled with families from across the valley. Daniel stood before the judge and presented the documents his father had protected for years. The court officially returned the stolen land to the hard-working settlers who had lived there for generations. Many people cried with joy. Some had waited decades for justice. After the hearing, Daniel walked outside where Emily and her children were waiting. He smiled warmly. "You once told me that no one should be left behind." Emily nodded. "I still believe that." Daniel handed her a small wooden box. Inside was the deed to a beautiful farmhouse near Ashcroft Ranch. Emily looked at him in disbelief. "I can't accept something this valuable." Daniel gently closed her hand around the papers. "This isn't charity. It's gratitude. You saved my life when you had almost nothing. You reminded me that true wealth isn't measured by land, gold, or power. It's measured by kindness." Tears filled Emily's eyes. Months later, the farmhouse became a place filled with laughter. Noah learned to ride horses alongside the ranch hands. Lily planted colorful flowers around the porch. Emily opened a small school where children from poor families could learn to read, for free. Daniel often visited, not as a wealthy businessman, but as a trusted friend who had become part of their family. Years later, travelers passing through the valley would hear an old story. Not about a rich ranch owner. Not about dangerous outlaws. But about a poor widow who chose compassion over fear. And proved that a single act of kindness can change countless lives. Please friends spot my channel. Like, share, comment. Subscribe for more stories. Thanks for watching.